Hello, Mr. Sobel. It's a pleasure for me to speak with you. You are the author of the book Storm Surge, Hurricane Sandy, Our Changing Climate and Extreme Weather of the Past and Future. You are using Hurricane Sandy as example to explain the forces for creating such a hurricane. What was unique about Sandy and what happened exactly in October 2012?
Sandy was a large hurricane that, as it was transitioning to an extratropical cyclone or a large winter-type storm, made a left turn that hadn't happened in modern history and hit the Jersey Shore, the New Jersey shore, south of New York City, with great strength. And the strong winds pushed the water into the Jersey Shore and into New York Harbor in a way that hadn't happened in about 200 years. So we had a massive flood in the city, flooded the subway system, flooded many low-lying areas. People had to be evacuated, killed a few people and caused tens of billions of dollars in damage. So it was an unprecedented event that had a huge impact on the city. That was in late October 2012, and I was there for it.
With regard to India, the word cyclone is more likely to be heard. What is the difference between a cyclone and a hurricane? Or is there any difference at all?
There's no difference between a cyclone and a hurricane. The scientific term is tropical cyclone, and we call them hurricane in the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific, typhoon in the Western Pacific, and cyclone in the North Indian Ocean region and some other names in other places. They're all the same. They're large storms that form over the tropical and subtropical oceans, have cyclonic circulations, which mean they're low pressure and they spin the same way as the Earth's rotation. And they get their energy from the warm tropical oceans.
What efforts were made to be prepared for Sandy?
So in New York City, it was known for at least 20 years that someday there would be a major hurricane, and even specifically what damage it would cause, for example, to the transit systems and other systems of the city. So there had been planning for some years of how to respond in such a case. And as the storm was forecast well several days in advance, there was time to take those emergency measures. So there were evacuations, the transit system was shut down, and those measures saved a lot of lives. What didn't happen was it was also known that we should build infrastructure better to be protected against storms, and that didn't happen. So the infrastructure was severely damaged. The transit system, power substations shorted out and blew up, and the power was out for several days, and a lot of damage was done to buildings. So the kind of planning that would have been necessary to make the city more resistant to storm surge didn't happen, although the short-term emergency management did and saved many lives.
And what have we learned from this situation? What security measures are in place in America now, and what could be done in countries like India to be prepared for the future?
So we've learned now that we're vulnerable to cyclones and storm surge in New York City. The scientists knew that already, but I think the population as a whole now knows it. And that and other recent storms in the United States have raised awareness that we're vulnerable. And it's likely even that global warming is increasing the risk due to sea level rise and strengthening the fact that storms are getting stronger. So we know we have to take measures to increase the resilience of the infrastructure. The best thing would be if we could reduce or even reverse development of vulnerable coastal areas, but that doesn't seem to be happening. In India, forecasting and emergency management have also improved, but the development of the cities and other areas has continued to put people in harm's way and to limit the effect to which people can be protected and can respond. For example, here in Chennai, we see, as I've seen in the last couple of days, how the traditional places that the water could flow are being built over, so that flooding is more severe now when it happens than when it would have happened in the past. So I think there's a need for more awareness and smarter development if people are to stay safe in cyclones. Although in the moment, here as in the United States, the warning and emergency management are better, so people are evacuated and gotten out of harm's way better. But in the long term, the damage is still great. Of course, around the world, we should also be taking action to reduce carbon emissions, to reduce the rate at which storms are getting stronger and sea levels rising.
Today you went to the Yenor region. Can you tell us a little bit about your impressions and whether there's an impact on the vulnerability regarding flooding?
Yeah, it was an amazing tour up today around Enor. We saw port coal plants being built and what had been a lovely barrier island, and fishing villages being displaced, and the ecosystem being degraded strongly by pollution from the coal plants. And also how coastal development blocks the normal water courses again. The groins built along the shore that stop the flow of sand and cause erosion, and water courses being stopped, walled off by development, or threatened to be walled off. So simply by, first of all, by putting infrastructure in harm's way, that infrastructure is vulnerable, but also as these things disrupt the natural flow of water and pave over the places where water used to go, it is increasing flood risk here north of Chennai.
One final question. Are you watching an extreme weather situation right now about which it would be worthwhile to write a book?
There are many extreme weather events about it which would be worthwhile to write books. I'm not watching one in particular. There have been so many in the last few years. Just this year alone, we had Hurricane Dorian, which affected Barbados, just off of the United States, very, very severely, almost destroyed that island completely. And the fires in California, which have been quite awful, and repeat from the fires a couple of years before. So we've had just a streak of hurricanes, fires, and floods and droughts. I'm not planning to write a book on any one of them, but I'm thinking to write something about the combination of the increasing extreme events and at the same time the fact that our national politics in the United States and also elsewhere in the world is actually going in exactly the wrong direction, in the direction of encouraging development in vulnerable areas, but even more so increasing carbon emissions and not taking seriously or even rejecting the science on climate change. So that tension between the increasing risk and the bad decisions that are being made by our government, our federal government in the United States, and to some extent elsewhere, is something I'm thinking about how to write about, but haven't quite figured it out yet. But that's I think that it's that combination of the atmospheric disasters and really the political disaster that needs to be expressed.
Thank you, Mr. Sobel.
You're welcome.